Hi, I'm going to show you a dish that our family has been making and eating for 4 generations, and I fondly call it Auntie Mei Mei's wonton soup. And this dish I cannot remember a day that I have not known about this dish, made it and eaten it since I was born. Auntie Mei Mei was a Shanghainese lady that lived about 3 doors down from my grandparents in Emerald Hill Road in Singapore, and she had 3 daughters and 1 son. The legend goes that they all had different fathers. Scandal. However, they were good friends with my grandparents and our family, and this is the dish that she taught us how to make. And so it travels from my grandparents to my parents to me and my children, and now my grandchildren eat it too. So it's comfort food for our family. Auntie Mei Mei's wonton it's really very simple. And here are the ingredients. So we've got 300 grams of pork mince. We want a bit of fat in the pork mince, so if it's difficult for you to get the fat into the pork mince, sometimes I get pork belly and mince it up myself. Take the skin off, mince it up. 150 grams of blanched chopped spinach that goes into it, and some seasoning. So what we have here is about a teaspoon of finely ground ginger, about a teaspoon of salt, and about half a teaspoon of white pepper. I think it's important to use white pepper. It's something that actually gives it a different flavour to the cracked black pepper that is usually used. Half a teaspoon of sugar. And in here is a half teaspoon of sesame seed oil, tablespoon of soy sauce, light soy sauce, not the dark one, and a tablespoon of Shaoxing wine. And finally we want a tablespoon of water in there. Now mixing it up is really pretty simple. I generally use my hands really to do it, and we're making this dish in Chinese Language Week, and it's really important, I think, to keep the traditions. I've lived in New Zealand now for 45 years, and the one regret I have is that I never really learned how to speak Chinese properly. I was brought up in an English-speaking household in Singapore. Mum and Dad sent me to a Chinese-speaking kindergarten when I was little. And I think that I cried all day, was so upset because I couldn't understand anyone, and so they decided to put me into an English-speaking kindergarten. And the problem here is that I never really quite learnt Chinese, and never taught my children how to learn Chinese, and I do regret that, because it's the way that we can communicate with a whole lot more people. And so I suppose my way of compensating for that is to actually learn the food of my culture. So using your fingers to make the filling, combine the filling into a really nice paste like so. And the next step is to actually fold it. Now, the question always comes about the pastry or the skins that we use. When I was little, we didn't have pasta machines. We didn't have shops that made that had ready-made pastry, so we made it by hand. You can imagine. It was a big labour of love, really, because the thing that classifies, the thing that actually makes dumplings so amazing is wafer thin wonton wrappers. This truly is almost translucent, and great wonton is a little bit like eating clouds. The skin, the pastry is translucent. The little bit of filling that you put in it is a taste explosion, and the broth that surrounds it, which is the other thing that's really important, is lovely, clear and tasty. So I now buy the wonton pastry because it's just so much easier to buy it. It's beautifully made out there. There's several different makers in New Zealand that actually does this, so it's all locally done. And the trick with this is a good fold and making the wonton so that it's a little mouthful. So it's like eating a mouthful of clouds. This recipe with 300 grams of minced pork will produce about 30 wontons, and I'll just demonstrate a few, and then we can talk about cooking them and serving them next. So we layer the wonton skins out. We put a teaspoonful of the filling, not too much because it needs to be in a lovely mouthful, in the middle of each of the pastries or skins, like so. I'd always thought with the spinach hidden in the wontons, it's a way of sneaking some vegetables into children's diet. If you have a kid that does not like eating vegetables, that here are some in the proverbial made them before, prepared them earlier. We moisten the edges, and look, by the time it's cooked, the shape will take on whatever shape the filling is, really. And so you have a choice, but I'm going to show you how our family does it. So one way, and we make what we call a nurse's hat. So you fold the wonton over and fold it over again and bring the corners together, and voila, you have a little bit of a nurse's hat. We'll do it one more time. So you fold the wrapper over the filling in half, fold that over again and bring the two corners together, and that's the nurse's hat. I'll just quickly make these, and in the meantime we'll turn on the water, because the thing you're going to do is you're going to cook the wontons off first and then put the broth into it. So a quick word about the broth. Nice clear broth is the key to a great bowl of wonton soup. So I make my broth with some chicken frames, really slowly on the stove with a couple of chicken frames maybe, and on the stove with maybe 2 litres of water, and seasoned with a couple of slices of ginger. And when I was growing up, my paternal grandmother would actually put the broth on, and she'd put it on in the morning, really slow heat, and she'd start skimming all day, skimming the scud off the top. So by the time she got to dinner time, it was as clear can be, and absolutely packed full of flavour. So the next step really is to actually bring the water up to the boil, cook the wontons, and I'll just go get the stock that we've got going here. So here's some stock that I've prepared. Bowl, and in the bowl got just a tad of sesame oil in the bottom, and here's about 30 wontons, which actually will that's about 300 grams of meat, and about half a packet of the wonton pastry. So once the water is up to the boil, we'll drop a handful of the wontons in. Maybe about, I don't know how many wontons you can eat, maybe about 6 or 8. Maybe, yeah. And you will know that your wontons are ready when they rise to the top of the pot. It doesn't take very long, honestly it doesn't, because the size of the filling is so tiny. So as you can see, the wontons are cooking and they are starting to float to the top, so it really didn't take very long. And we'll just now pop them in the bowl with a slotted spoon. And the next thing to do, I'll get a ladle, is to ladle the broth over the cooked wontons. And just a bit of garnish to go with it. And what we do at home, we have 4 different garnishes. First, a bit of spring onions chopped, a bit of fried garlic, which you can actually get from Asian food store, or if you can be bothered, to peel the garlic, mince it and fry it really gently until it's golden. Similarly, some fried onions, and I use shallots for that. And finally, some chopped red chilies. I'll take the seeds out. And soy sauce. And there you have it. Auntie Mei Mei's Shanghainese wontons. I hope you enjoy the recipe, and see you again.